We need humans who will lead. That is the simple idea behind the Well-Led podcast. This is Kate Johnson, and I want to thank you for joining me today. The workplace, the world even, doesn't need perfect leaders. We need humans willing to learn how to lead well. And what does leading like a human entail? It's a surprisingly short list. Demonstrating care, providing support, choosing grace, and moving to action. Naturally, these essentials do require leaders to possess certain mindsets and abilities. We began last month with an examination of the first of these, vulnerability. Over 4 weeks, we reflected on and discussed the nature of vulnerability, why it matters in leadership, and some practical ways you can make vulnerability a reality for your team. My hope is that 2 clear takeaways rose to the surface across these 4 episodes. First, vulnerability is a leadership competency, not a personality trait. We consistently described vulnerability as a choice leaders make in service of trust, clarity, and effective work. It shows up in practical ways, owning mistakes, admitting gaps in knowledge, accepting feedback without defensiveness, and sharing appropriate context. When practiced with judgment and self-awareness, vulnerability strengthens credibility rather than undermining it. It signals steadiness, not uncertainty, and invites others to contribute honestly and responsibly. Second, vulnerability is relational and must be sustainable. Leaders set the tone. When they model thoughtful vulnerability, psychological safety becomes possible, and teams move from self-protection to collaboration. To be clear, though, vulnerability has a cost. Leaders must pair openness with self-regulation and recovery through debriefing, decompression, and reflection. Vulnerability that is not tended to leads to exhaustion. Vulnerability that is practiced with care builds trust and makes leadership more effective over time. Today we will begin our time with the second competency you need to lead well by demonstrating care: empathy. There's a lovely through line here. Vulnerability is the courage to share your humanity. Humanity, in turn, is defined by empathy. We cannot easily separate them, nor should we. Remember, we are vulnerable because it builds trust and allows us to be in a position of caring. It sets the stage for empathy. Without crossing from vulnerable to empathetic, you fail to focus on the employee, and you cannot really lead well. Empathy is the effort to understand, so that care can be effective. What is empathy, exactly? A very simple definition would be the ability to feel what someone else is feeling. Like any human characteristic, though, empathy is nuanced and has roots in our biology. Experts typically identify 2 forms of empathy: affective and cognitive. Now, I want to proceed as a layperson here. Not only am I not a psychologist, my goal is not to deliver a lecture on the topic. Instead, I want to establish a working vocabulary with easily defined terms. I've provided a few links in the show notes for anyone who wants to do a deeper dive, and I invite you to reach out or comment on this episode if you have anything to add. So our simple definition for empathy is, again, the ability to feel what someone else is feeling. The affective side of this, in my own words, your feelings about others' feelings. I see you crying and perceive that you are sad, and I also feel sad with or for you. Your emotions have an effect on me. This can be an automatic response, and I'll share a little about the science behind this in a moment. Effective empathy can cause an emotional response or impact us with heightened awareness or even stress due to having sensory input coming from another's emotions. It helps me to understand the concept by loosely thinking of this being empathy that lives in our hearts. And cognitive empathy, on the other hand, as the sort that lives in the mind. It is the ability to grasp another's perspective. If you've read To Kill a Mockingbird, you likely remember the moment when Scout stands on the Radleys' porch and surveys the neighborhood. She is intentional to imagine Boo Radley doing the same and trying to see the world as he did. She is a wonderful model of cognitive empathy in this moment. Personally, I am enamored with cognitive empathy because it is an act of imagination, but a purposeful one intended to increase understanding and close the distance between us. If you want to build your cognitive empathy skill, it can be as straightforward as reading a novel. Consuming works of fiction has long been recognized as a way to increase empathy. So in short, empathy expresses itself through our feelings about other people's feelings, affective, and in our ability to take on another person's perspective, cognitive. Again, it helps me remember and distinguish between the two by thinking of them residing in our hearts and minds, respectively. Of course, this is not physiologically accurate. So, where exactly does our capacity for empathy dwell? The Greeks and other ancient peoples believed that emotions came from the stomach or abdomen, hence the idea of a gut feeling. And while recent insights into the overall connectedness and interplay of the human gut and brain will no doubt refine our knowledge here, we currently understand that empathy has a home in specialized brain cells, what are called mirror neurons. First observed and documented by Italian researchers in the 1990s, mirror neurons tell us that empathy is, in a way, hardwired in humans. Scientists studying macaque monkeys noted that the same regions of the brain showed activity when monkeys watched a researcher grasp a peanut or place the peanut in their mouth, as those that did when the monkey performed the same action. In essence, the brain responded to seeing an action exactly as if the monkey did the action itself. Over the last 3 decades, research has expanded to study this phenomenon in human brains and to explore responses to emotional stimuli. All of this to say, our brains possess the ability to create a neurological experience that mirrors another person's actions and feelings. So, yeah. Wow. Empathy isn't a soft skill. It's complex programming that influences how we engage with the world. So, what does empathy do at work? What does it mean for employee-leader relationships? Like vulnerability, when we experience genuine empathy, it can establish or enhance trust. It lets us feel seen and understood. This creates connection and also paves the way for clear communication. Leaders who engage effective empathy are capable of accurately assessing and responding to employees' feelings and needs. And intentional perspective taking, use of cognitive empathy, allows you to consider how employees will experience work conditions and respond to change. A leader who integrates cognitive empathy into their decision-making, one who figuratively steps onto the Radleys' porch and imagines what's to come through another's eyes, will be far more equipped to address concerns and plan for the downstream people impact of their choices. In this way, empathetic leaders have the capacity to navigate change with minimal disruption. There are also studies that show employees who feel understood by their managers experience fewer sick days and generally report greater overall well-being. From a strictly business perspective, both in terms of change agility and productivity, empathy benefits the bottom line. In addition to these outcomes, empathy reinforces itself. In other words, empathy begets empathy. When a leader demonstrates care and understands an employee, that employee in turn will be primed to express empathy for coworkers and clients. It creates a virtuous cycle of sustainable behaviors and results. If we understand effective leadership, leading well, as a method of achieving results in partnership with employees, then empathy becomes an essential skill for leaders, not just an emotional response or a thought exercise, but those feelings and ideas put into action. Empathetic leaders go beyond the automatic responses of their mirror neurons. They merge this aspect of humanity with intentional behaviors that influence their decisions, communication, and relationships. They become the embodiment of care. In the coming weeks, we'll hear insights from other leaders and discuss practical ways to lead effectively with empathy. I'll close with one simple idea for how you might begin or increase your empathy practice. Set aside an hour or two, or even as little as 30 minutes, to go to a coffee shop, the office cafeteria, or a similar public space. During your visit, observe the people you see and consider what type of day each person has had. What feelings do you perceive them exhibiting? Imagine what jobs they hold, what they do in their spare time, what their friends and family love about them. Reflect on what they see when they look around the room or interact with other people around them. There's no need to talk to anyone, no requirement to share your thoughts. Just an uncomplicated exercise in perspective taking and curiosity that will directly benefit your ability to experience empathy. I would love to hear how it goes. If you found this episode useful, you can support the show by following or subscribing on your preferred podcast platform. It helps other leaders find these conversations. And if you're open to it, leaving a quick rating or review goes a long way. We'll be back next Tuesday with an episode featuring other voices sharing thoughts on empathy. And later this season, we'll dig into the importance of good humor. If you want updates on episodes, resources, and upcoming offerings from 123 Limited, you can join the newsletter at any time. For more tools and perspectives on leading well, especially in the space where results and humanity meet, visit 123limited.com. Thanks again for being here, and I look forward to continuing the conversation next week.